Hey everyone. First thing, this is an amazing tool that, at first, may not seem all that wonderful. But before we get into it, I also want to say that this is actually the second video I've made on Patchwork. The first, though I thought it was great, but by the time I finished making it, I learned so much more, and then learned even more shortly after that should have been in the video. So I'm starting over with this one. Hopefully I don't miss too much this time. And because there is so much to cover in this video, I will be sure to add chapters to easily find the subject you may be specifically interested in. So what is Patchwork? Patchwork is an AI-powered toolkit running partially on top of or side by side with Midjourney. And it's for storytellers, world builders, and honestly, anyone who loves to daydream about epic worlds and characters, and just like me, is always buying more notebooks to fill with ideas. Patchwork can help you take those wild and crazy ideas floating around in your head and help you organize them on a massive, supposedly infinite canvas. And because of the integration with Midjourney, you can create stunning visuals to bring your stories and characters to life. In order to show you everything I know about Patchwork, the easiest thing to do is to start from scratch and create a completely new world. To start using Patchwork, first you need a Midjourney account. And I'm sure you can figure out how to set that part up on your own. You will also need to have a Google login for it, even if you already have a Discord login. As long as you meet those requirements, head on over to patchwork.midjourney.com. The login interface for it is not pretty, at least not yet, but just go ahead and log in if you aren't already. This is where the Google login is required. Though mine will look a bit different, your page should look pretty similar to mine. I've cleaned mine up a bit and named it Shady's Oasis. But this is your launch page. Or technically this could be your world page too. Though I'd highly recommend against doing so, because if you wanted to work on multiple worlds, that would become a bit of an issue. But while we're here, I'm going to go over the basics of the interface. On the left-hand side is your menu and bar of tools that you always have access to. The first 6 options are there to help you create. Those things being, as you can see, characters, events, places, props, factions, and random whatnot thingamajigs. Yes, that's the technical term. Beneath those are the tools. Note and image, as you'll see eventually, are basically the same as the previous 6 things mentioned, but with 0 attachment to a type. Again, I'll explain more about it later. Import is new, as it wasn't there last time I logged in, but it looks like we can now import external images into your world. Portal and profile, I'll explain those in just a minute as we're going to be using those shortly. And then under those is world. Save is to create a backup of your entire world. This backup creates a JSON file of all the data of your world. It does not, however, download or backup any images created. All images created within Patchwork are being created on your regular Midjourney account and are accessible at any time on the website. But as far as backing up, I recommend doing this from time to time, just in case. And that's really all it's there for, just in case. Well, there might be some other reasons. This should make load pretty obvious as to what it does. Hopefully you never have to use it, but also because it's a JSON file, you could do some crazy stuff with it and load it, and, well, if you know how to do that, I'll let your imagination run free. If you don't, probably not a good idea to touch it. And the last option is share. No, not her. This allows you, on a world-by-world basis, to share or not share your world with other people. There are 3 options. None. This will make it so nobody else can see the world you've created. View. This will allow people to view all the work you've put into the world you've created. And edit. This will not only allow people to view your world, but also to edit anything within it. Obviously only use this one if you're doing something collaborative and with people you trust, or if you just don't care about the world you created. That's it for the menu options. Everything else on the canvas is what Midjourney likes to call scraps. Personally, I call them nodes, but I'll attempt to stick with scraps for this video. But now you know what I mean depending on if I say nodes instead. Depending on if it's a world scrap, character, event, etc., you'll always start off with the main title scrap for it and the description scrap that goes along with it. Here you can see the title one that says Shady's Oasis. and the description scrap that is attached to it where it has, well, a description of the world that I input. The image itself is an image that was created based on the description being used as the prompt. Then the 3 circular items to the right are portals. One named Masquerade Intrigues, another Neon Spire, and the other US Outpost 31. Look out for Kurt Russell. These are known as portals, of which you create, as they will take you to the worlds that you've created. So these are 3 of the worlds that I have already created. Neon Spire being the one that I was using to create the first video, that didn't work out all too well. Now that we know what the interface is, at least most of it, now the question is, how do you interact with everything, and how does everything interact with each other? While still not in a newly created world, I'm going to keep this to the basics. The first thing you need to know is that you can zoom in and out simply by using the scroll wheel on your mouse. If you're using a trackpad, you can use the 2 fingers to pinch, or I guess unpinch, to zoom in and out. This will come in very handy when you start to have many scraps everywhere. By default, your mouse is used to drag and move things around. So if you click on the background of the canvas and drag, it will move the entire canvas with everything on it. Otherwise, anything you mouse over, and as long as you have the open hand cursor, if you click and drag, it will move that scrap. If you want to select multiple items together, there are multiple ways to do it, depending on what you want selected. On both PC and Mac, you can hold down Control and then click and drag to create a box over anything you want selected. You can also use Command on a Mac instead if you prefer. The next option is to select items individually. For some reason, quite a few different keys work for this. You can use Shift, Control, or Command on a Mac, and while holding one of them down, just click on each of the items you want selected. Another option is based on context of the items. As you can see here, I have the scraps for the title, description, and an image for Shady's Oasis, and they all say that somewhere on the scraps. Either by double-clicking on the circular image of the title scrap, or anywhere on the title of the other scraps, it will automatically select everything with those labels. So if you had a character, every single image or whatever else you add to that character would be selected. Same with any event, place, etc. Now this also works with image generations, but I'll demonstrate that when we actually have some more images to show. Actually, I'm not too excited about the image I'm using for my main page here, so I can demonstrate with that. First, I'm going to change the description, as that was the one that was automatically created when I named it originally. I'm going to change it to a luxurious resort oasis where every need is met. The views are impeccable, the temperature is warm, the palm trees are many, and the waterfalls are pristine. Now remember that this is just the description. This is not actually the prompt for an image. With the description selected, you should see 6 icons at the top. Once again, we'll get into all of those later, but for now, click on the one that looks like a painter's palette. As soon as you tap that icon, a pink information bubble will pop up in the top left. Click and drag on board to construct image. This is what happens almost every single time you create or add anything to your canvas. If ever, for some reason, you do not want to place or create the new item, the easiest way to cancel is to hit the escape key. But for this situation, I do want to create an image. Or actually, the size of the window you create will be the size and aspect ratio of the images created, eventually. So be sure to make it the way you want it. As I already like the size of the image that's there, I'm going to click around one of the corners of that image and then drag to the opposite corner to make the new window roughly the same size. The new window will have its ingredients at the top. More on that later, but just know that because it has Shady's Oasis as one of the ingredients, that it will be attached to that scrap. Below that is where the prompt goes. By default, it puts in the full description. It's always up to you, but I personally almost always put in an actual prompt to get an image much more to my liking, instead of using the description. So I would instead put in something like this. A luxurious tropical resort oasis with impeccable views and warm weather, surrounded by palm trees and multiple pristine waterfalls. Secluded, romantic. With my prompt ready, all there is to do is hit the paint button, and that will bring up 4 windows the exact same size of the palette window that was just there. I like to spread them out so I can see them all at the same time. Yeah, I just realized this is going to take a while because I have stuff running in the background on relax mode for quite a while. Now, I could be wrong, but there was a problem for people that were using relax generations. If you were out of fast time and you tried to create any images in Patchwork, it would error out. So in your prompt, you had to add -- relax as an extension. However, I believe it is fixed now. If not, now you know how to hopefully deal with it yourself. And here are the 4 images it came up with. I'm only going to use one of them and get rid of the rest. I could easily put them off screen if I wanted to keep them and keep it organized, but it's not like I actually lose the images by hitting the X button for the ones I don't want. They're all still in my Midjourney library on the website. I think I'm going to stick with this one on the bottom left. And I'll remove the old one and put this in its place. There, perfect. Now, everything is right in the world. Well, at least Shady's world. One last thing before we actually start creating a new world, and it's pretty simple. Plan ahead. I know that might seem obvious, but there's a big reason for it in this case. For this time, as it's just an example in the YouTube video, my world that I'm creating is actually just a city. And within that city, we'll have places like different buildings and districts, etc. All pretty simple. But let's look at it from a much grander perspective. Say I was Tolkien and creating Middle-earth. First, you'd probably think of places like the Shire, Bree, Rohan, Gondor, Mordor, Rivendell, Lorien, etc. The problem is that if you made these as places within the world of Middle-earth, what would you make Helm's Deep? What would you make Fangorn? Or what about Hobbiton, Tuckborough, and Buckland? Those are all places within Rohan and the Shire. So how does that work? But then what if I went deeper into Hobbiton and wanted places for Bag End, the Green Dragon Inn, Fernie's Fen, and Bagshot Row? It may seem complicated, and just know that you can always move anything around and edit it, but it's always easier if you have it set up correctly or at least close to it from the start. So what's the solution? Worlds within worlds. Start with a world for Middle-earth. When in that world, create worlds for the Shire, Rohan, Gondor, and Mordor. You can always make more for the lesser known areas later. Then inside the world of the Shire, create worlds for Hobbiton, Tuckborough, and Buckland. And then finally inside Hobbiton, you start creating places for the individual buildings, fields, and lakes, or whatever important places you feel are needed. But don't overthink it either. It might be a bit unfair that I pretty much used the world builder as my example. In the end, it's better to just start working instead of planning and then never getting anything done. Sort of like how it's better to start building a new world instead of continuing to explain on and on and on. So let's do it. Creating a new world. As I mentioned earlier, the 3 circular scraps on the right are worlds that I've already created. And to create one of those, you need to select from the Tools menu on the left, Portal. Click on that, and just as with the image creation scrap, a pink bubble pops up, but this time, you just click on the canvas. You don't drag it all to change the size, so click away. This will create a blank portal with the word link in it. Click on that. This brings up an entire new screen, hiding your canvas beneath. Up at the top, what we'll be choosing is the button that says Let's Go to create a new world. But quickly before doing that, let's take a quick look at this page. First, I have a feeling this page is going to change as it's getting to be huge, as more people are creating more and more worlds. But the first 4 in this instance show in the bottom right a blue owned tag. These are the worlds that I've already created, so most likely you won't see any of these if you haven't created a world yet. And yes, I've created 4, but one of them, the one that's Jamaica, is actually a world that's within a world, as I stated earlier. After those 4, with the green tag, are those that other people have created that are both viewable and editable, meaning you could connect to one of those right now from your main world, look at what someone else has created, and add your own input to it. and change things around. And once you get to the end of the editable worlds, are all the viewable only worlds with the pink tag. And I'm sure you already know what these ones are. This is going to be the majority of available worlds, as it's the default setting for any world you create. You can see here on the right side, the slider for the page is still way up at the top. So that means the rest of this is all viewable. I'm going to go through that really quickly. Yeah, that's a lot. Heading all the way back up to the top, let's click on the Let's Go button. This next page is where you input in general terms what you want your world to be. If you're just messing around and want to try things out, you can just hit the random dice button on the far right to get some options. Artists who control the weather, underwater ballet academy, planet of sentient flowers. Yeah, anyway, some are decent and some are just weird or terrible. But what you put in the prompt area will be used as the description, not the title. Also realize that all of this can be changed after creation quite easily. In fact, I'm going to put in the description of the city of Oralis that I'm creating, but that won't actually be the prompt I want to use for the images of Oralis, but I'll deal with that after the creation. In the meantime, here's my description of the world, or city in this case. The next part below is a psychology test to see how much you like or dislike cats. Okay, maybe that's not right. But in all seriousness, this part I don't really care for. At least I don't have much use for it, but for the video, I'll use it to show how it works. So each of the images below of cats basically represents a different style that you might want to use for the images within your world that you're creating. The problem I have with it is that if you're setting up a world that you want to have a specific look with all of your images, most likely you aren't going to randomly get a style reference number or two that are going to work for your vision. But again, as an example, let's pick this one by clicking the box in the top right. Maybe I don't like any of the other ones, but I want another style reference to use in my new world. With the one still selected, if I hit the text, "Show me more," it will refresh all of the styles available, except for the one selected stays the same. And you can keep hitting it until you come across one or another that you want to use. I'll go with this one, because why not? The only other option left is the checkbox at the bottom for Use My Personalization. All this does is make it so that your initial images of your world will use your Midjourney personalization settings. It is super simple to add this in after your world is created, so you can take it or leave it. I'm going to keep it selected just so you can see what it does when selected. And that's it. Hit Create World and it will create a new canvas for your new world. Just might have to give it a minute. Immediately upon creation, you'll have a minimum of a total of 7 new scraps, with an additional one for each style reference you chose. The ones you've already seen are the world scrap, the world description scrap, and the 4 image scraps of the world description. The other 2 new types of scraps are the aforementioned style reference scraps, which is self-explanatory, and the profile scrap that is where your personalization number is kept, of which you can edit and change at any time. You can even create new ones to replace or have multiple by clicking the profile button in the tools menu. But first things first, let's name our world. Just click on the current name, which shows a truncated description, and then type in whatever you decide your world's name should be. I'm going with Oralis for my city or world. With that change, you can now see the tags of every single scrap that's a child of the world scrap changes its name to Oralis. The first issue I have with the way the world starts is that the images created are square. Not a fan. Unless I'm showing a character or a close-up of a specific item, I would use a wide aspect ratio for everything. Then, unless I was super lucky, I wouldn't be happy with the look of the images for 2 reasons. First, I'm not happy with the style references, and I'd prefer just to not use them for now. And the main problem is that the images are based on the description used for the world, instead of a hopefully well-crafted specific prompt. Although these images do look pretty nice, they're just not what I'm going for in this situation. So what I'm going to do is delete the 4 images created. Once again, remember that these images are still in your Midjourney library on the website. Then, selecting the world description scrap, without changing the description, I'm going to click on the painter's palette and then click and drag a roughly 16:9 aspect ratio box. And notice as I'm creating the box, at the start when it's small, you can see that the line around the outside is dotted and in the middle says that it's too small. So you have to keep dragging until it's large enough. Inversely, drag too far and you'll be shown that it's too large. Okay, for some reason it actually says too small, but I think you understand. With the new image creation scrap created, you'll notice a couple of new additions from before, depending on your options you may have chosen during the world creation. Any image you create now has the style references you chose and the personalization number, which they call profile for some reason in Patchwork. I'm going to turn off both of those for now, and in fact I'll be deleting the style reference scraps from the canvas so that they won't show up anymore. But at least you know now how they are used. And as far as I know, you cannot currently create a style reference scrap of a number of your choosing. With that gone, I'm going to input the actual prompt I want to use, which is the following. And you might notice that I have appended a couple of the double dash Midjourney extensions. That's because you can literally use any and all extensions just like you would with any prompt here within Patchwork. Also, I add in the quality 1 or --Q1 as images created in Patchwork are for some reason defaulted to 0.5. I guess people are worried about saving time by having the lower quality, but I think it still creates them pretty darn fast, so I don't see the point. Because this video is about Patchwork and not about creating great images with Midjourney, I'm not going to go through all of the images, but just show how they turned out. If I were truly working on making this a fully fleshed out world, I'd probably do a lot of rerolls and delete ones I don't like. Before I continue creating my world, I'm going to show you how to escape your world. If you look in the very bottom right of your canvas, you'll see your inventory. In it, you'll see a little box named Portal. If you mouse over it, you'll see a portal open up that shows your main landing page world, and you'll notice a plus and an X button pop up on it. Click on the plus symbol, and like any scrap, click on your canvas, and it will then add a new portal to your world to bring you back to your main page. It's that simple. When you mouse over it, it'll say warp instead of the name of it. Click on it, and back to the main page you go. Back here on the main page, you can now see the portal for my newest world of Oralis. I'm going to move that around to make everything more organized and pretty. And when you're ready to go back to your world to work on it some more, just click on the new portal there. Now I'm just going to do a quick organization of what's here already. I'm going to put the profile up and over here. Actually, just like the style references, I am going to delete that because I will not be using it. I'm going to make the oasis or the portal back to Shady Oasis here on the left here. And then I'm going to put all the images of Oralis up top. In fact, I take that back. I'm going to delete a couple. I'm just going to keep these 2 middle ones for now. And there we go. With the basic world set up, it's up to you what order you want to go in. You want to create characters, places, factions, or whatever. You can go back and forth. It's whatever works best for you. But I'm going to start off with my main character. No surprise here. Click on the character button under the Imagine menu on the left, then click anywhere you want to add that new character. This will just give you a blank character title scrap and description scrap. Maybe you don't know the name you want to use, and maybe you don't even know the description of the character yet, and want some ideas. Instead of typing the name here, select the title scrap, and if you mouse over the light bulb icon, it will tell you that that is the Tell Me More icon. By clicking on this, it will populate both the title scrap with a made-up name and a full description of the character in the description scrap. And what's great about it is that it understands the information of the world that you've created already. so the description of the character makes sense for it. And what's also nice about it is that if you hit tell me more again, instead of changing the name and the description scraps to someone different, it will actually tell you more about the character that it just created. And tell me more works for almost every type of scrap, and it's contextual. I'll show a few other examples when I get this world a bit more populated and fleshed out. But for now, I'm going to delete this character, as I already know the name and description that I'll be using. And in case you accidentally ever delete a scrap or do something else incorrectly, undo does work. So Command Z or Control Z. With that example deleted, again, I'm going to create a new character. My main character's name is Aurelia Ravel. As for the description, as I'd said before, it isn't, or at least doesn't need to be the prompt you use to create the image. What this means is that you can add a lot of information all at once to the description scrap if you want. And that's why I have both a physical description and a backstory in the description scrap. And now, creating the images for Aurelia, here's the full prompt I'm using, including the 9:16 portrait aspect ratio I'll be using for all characters. Let's see what we get. I'm using a style reference that I think is fun and works pretty well for this world I'm creating. I think it works well for what seems like conceptual depictions of the world. But I like these. I think they all turned out great. The one thing I'll say that I'm not going to bother with here is that you should actually pick your favorite one, or maybe two, and delete the others. The reason being that if you create any other subsequent images using the character, you can use it as a character reference, and it would be nice to keep the character consistent. It's never 100% the same, but why hinder it? But as I'm demonstrating, I'm going to keep them all for now. Now I'm going to create a couple more characters, but because it's literally doing the exact same thing again, I'm going to fast forward to the results. First, we have my main character's sidekick, Ashen Cade. Here's the prompt I used for him. And the next character that I'm creating for now is the main villain, Eric's Dreadbane. And here's the prompt I used for him. And yes, I know, I may have gone a bit overboard on the character prompts. Sue me. Places and the other options are all pretty much the same, but let's go through one of the places just for fun. The first place I'm going to create is called the Gutter Light. Going to be a shady bar where the dregs of society go, and sometimes information is bought and sold. Or it's just a hangout for my character and her sidekick. So with the name and the description put in, I'm going to once again just click for the image scrap, and then with my prompt, I'm going to make the aspect ratio in landscape instead of portrait like I used for the characters. So first I have this prompt that I'll be using, which includes text for the name of the bar. You may have noticed that the beginning of the prompt said exterior shot. That's because for this place, I want both interior and exterior images for the location. So I also have this prompt that I'll be using for the interior. And let's take a closer look at those. Those are actually pretty good. From there, I'm going to create the Glow Rift Bazaar. This is the main market of the city of Oralis. Most anything can be found here for purchase, as long as it isn't too illegal. Next up is the high-end luxurious but shady casino, the Crimson Vault. This is run by the main villain, Eric's Dreadbane, and not a place where Aurelia and Ashen are welcomed warmly. Like the Gutter Light, the Crimson Vault will also have both exterior and interior images created for it. The last place will be the Ruins, known to the locals as the Bleeding Gates. Okay, I kind of made this description really long. Probably get rid of a lot of it. I'm just going to leave it for now. But I just had a lot of information I wanted on the Ruins. This is where the story will eventually lead to for the climax. Most likely. Who knows? Things can change. And quite easily with Patchwork. Before I go on to props, I want to show you something you can do when things might start to get a bit messy. Obviously, you can see I've been kind of organizing as I go along, but that's not always going to be that way. For instance, looking at my images of the gutter light. Say I had them all scattered around. This is over here, that's over there, that's over there, that's over there, whatever. But then you can click on the title scrap and the little box icon labeled Gather Detailed Scraps. This will literally bring all scraps linked to that place or character or whatever and put them in all some sort of order. Your world could get huge, and little tools like this can help so much with keeping things organized and easier to find. Kind of a weird way to organize them, but still brings them all together and somewhat organized. I think I like my original way better, but you get the idea. For props, I'm only going to create one for now. Again, these are all created the same way, so there's not too much to learn from this. But like any story, we need a MacGuffin. For this, we're going with the Ether Shard. This is the item that everyone in the story wants, as it's supposed to be a super powerful source of energy, enough to power the entire city on its own. Yep, nothing original here, but at least it's not as bad as the Disney Star Wars MacGuffins. And this one I'm actually going with a 4:3 ratio, just because it's more specifically for an item and not a place or a character. And I'm going to try the organizing thing with just this, see how it does. Yeah, that works. Though I have to say I'm not particularly interested in any of these images because none of them actually show like a actual small crystal shard. I'm going to give it another go really quickly. And here's the updated prompt I'm using. Okay, that's weird. While those are painting, I'm going to get rid of these other ones. Wow, it's taking quite a while. Yeah, those are definitely much closer to what I would just... Yeah, that worked much better. Before I create the factions, I want to share a bit more about how powerful Patchwork can actually be. Earlier I mentioned a little bit about the Tell Me More feature, but now I'm going to tell you more about it. Taking a look at Ash and Cade's description and backstory, it's pretty simple. He used to work for the bad guys, then he didn't, and now he's a thief and works with Aurelia. So, what if you want to know more? As I showed you before, you could just hit the Tell Me More light bulb, and it would create another description scrap with more random information. What if you want to know something more specific? For instance, how Ashen first met Aurelia. Well, you basically do the same thing, but first, edit the description that's there by adding to the end of it, tell me how Ashen and Aurelia first met each other. Now, when you hit the light bulb, the new description will do exactly what you just told it to do. And if you don't like what it first comes up with, you can just delete the scrap response and hit the light bulb again until you get something more to your liking. I think that's pretty great. The next Imagine menu item that I'm going to create are the factions. But before I do, I want to mention that, for the most part, there is no functional difference between any of these things you can create. Obviously, one difference is that the world is black, characters are red, places are green, etc. So that helps to keep things organized. The main difference is that which is not seen. The system itself recognizes Aurelia, Ashen, and Eric's as characters. It recognizes the gutter light, etc. as places. What this means is that it understands the context of the things you've created. So when I create a scrap that says to tell me where Aurelia likes to go in her free time, it can respond with something along the lines of,
Aurelia loves to see all of the new wares at the Glow Rift Bazaar that travelers from afar come to Auralis to sell.
In other words, because I was asking about a place she likes to go, the model was able to pick a place from the created places to use in the response. It doesn't mean that it will use one of the places, but it's possible because it's contextually an option. So with that in mind, that's where factions come in. One of the factions I'd planned to use is already used in the description of both Ashen and Eric's, and that's the Syndicate. I'm just going to create the 3 factions I had in mind quickly, as there isn't anything different about their creation, and you really don't need images for them. However, I figured why not. So I'm going with some sort of theme or emblem for each of them. First, we'll start off with the supposed good guys, the Luminaries. They're the self-proclaimed protectors of Oralis. They enforce strict laws and heavy surveillance, claiming to maintain order and protect the city from chaos. While their methods appear noble, their obsession with control often leads to oppression. Next up, we have the definite baddies, the evil of Oralis, and that would be the Syndicate. They are a ruthless criminal organization led by Eric Dreadbane. They control Oralis' underground market, deal in illegal magic, and use brute force to maintain their influence. Their ultimate goal is to claim the Ether Shard and solidify their power. Last are the Reclaimers. They are a loose network of scavengers, rebels, and idealists who reject the authority of both the Luminaries and the Syndicate. They value independence and survival, but their lack of unity leaves them vulnerable in the larger conflict. There really isn't too much to do with them right now, but now it's more information for the system to understand about the world you're creating. As I'm pretty sure I've already stated, or if I haven't, I'm stating it now, Patchwork is a great tool, but it's very new, which means that it has a ton to grow, and hopefully many new features will be added soon. One of those is to simply add more types of connections. It would be nice that once you have factions set up, that you could have all of your characters automatically linked to which faction they are in, and maybe even have some of them double dipping. The next thing I want to show a bit more of are notes. These are literally the exact same thing as any of the description scraps, except for the fact that they aren't linked to any specific type of scrap, be it a character, place, prop, or whatever. First, I'm going to literally use them as notes. I know I'm going to need a lot more characters, so I'm just going to create a single note where I continuously add more characters to it as I think of them. And I'll be doing the same for props and places. With characters, I know so far that I'll need a shadowy figure in the bar, a bartender, a merchant, a pickpocket, an auctioneer, and a security guard. Maybe I should do this when I can actually see what I'm typing. And we'll make it a little prettier. For the props, I'll be adding an Ether Shard map and a decoding device. And with places, I only have the auction room as an addition for now. Images, just like notes, are literally the exact same thing as their counterparts, but without any connection to any scraps. These are great if you just want to test out prompt ideas for whatever reason. And if you do get something you like and want to use, you can very easily link it to any of your previously created characters, places, etc. As an example, if I just used the regular image scrap and I wanted to try out different ideas for the Ether Shard from earlier, and I put in the new prompt. Once created, I can select the 4 images by either selecting them the way I mentioned at the start of the video, or I could even just double click on any of them and all 4 images will be selected. Then, whichever one has the tool showing above it, hit the chain icon that is labeled as link, and then I'll click on the Ether Shard title scrap. This will now have these images linked to it with the purple colored tag and everything. With our characters, places, factions, and most importantly, our MacGuffin in place, it's time to tie everything together into a simple narrative. To really create the story, many more characters and places would need to be created to completely flesh everything out. I don't think either of us have the time for that right now, though. So going with what we have so far. For this, I'm going to demonstrate how you might want to use the event scraps. I already know how I want things to play out, but we're going to take a look at what Midjourney can do for you. First, the story begins in Oralis, a cyberpunk city powered by ancient magic. Our heroes, Aurelia Ravel and Ashen Cade, they discover a lead to the Ether Shard, a powerful artifact said to control the city's magic. However, both the Syndicate and the Luminaries are also after it, each with their own dangerous agenda. Now I'm going to start a new event, This is going to be called the Gutter Light Informant. Hitting the Tell Me More button now would just give a completely random event with some of the information already added to your canvas. But as I know where I want to begin, I'm going to add the very start here with Aurelia and Ashen go to the Gutter Light to meet with a shady informant to get information on the Ether Shard. Now, on that description, I'm going to hit Tell Me More for an idea of what could happen next. But while I'm at it, I'm going to hit it multiple times for multiple ideas. I mean, why not? Maybe you'll get something you like, maybe not. Maybe you'll at least get something that sparks some inspiration. But picking one of them, I'm going to go with, well, the one that is not turning the shady informant into an AI robot or program of some sort. But I actually do kind of like the one that isn't. So let me first delete all these ones that I'm not going to be using. And then with that, I'm going to append to that description, tell me how the informant betrayed Aurelia. With that addition to it, I'm going to hit Tell Me More a few times again, on the new description, of course. I'm honestly not a big fan of any of these. I just don't believe that Aurelia would continue to do any sort of transaction with anyone that got her parents killed. I'm surprised the guy across the table is still alive, actually. And I don't believe that she'd have gone into hiding for years. Though I do like the simple idea of the informant just having stolen and sold an artifact. So I'll just go with that one and delete the death of the family part. Also, before I forget, I'm going to link the description scraps to this event. That's better. Now another thing you can also do is create dialogue. And this works for all description scraps. But being that we're in a specific event, this is a good place to do it. So at the end of the last description, I'm going to type in, create a name for the informant, and write dialogue for Aurelia being mad at and threatening the informant's life. Once again, hit Tell Me More, and let's see what we get. Now I get that this isn't the newest ChatGPT model built in, but it handles simple tasks and information pretty well. Also, I guess I should add the new name of the informant to the character's note I made a few minutes ago. Either way, you get the idea of the event scraps. You could even, like all of the rest, create images based on each description part of the event, though I'm not going to do that right now. So as far as the story goes, the short version of the whole story, for now, is that Aurelia and Ashen go to the Gutter Light, hear rumors, and get a map from a shady informant. Then they head to the Glowrift Bazaar, where they barter for supplies and a decoding device to understand the map they received from the informant. With the information decoded, they go to the Crimson Vault Casino to retrieve a key artifact and narrowly escape. Finally, with everything they need, they head to the ruins, known as the Bleeding Gates, where the climactic showdown unfolds between the heroes, the Syndicate, and the Luminaries. Nothing too exciting. Just remember, this is for demonstration purposes. I don't claim to be a master storyteller or world builder myself. I mean, I'm not Tolkien or George Lucas or Stan Lee. But stay tuned to the end for a much more in-depth version of the story. I promise to make it look pretty. I mentioned earlier that they just added the import button, and I was assuming it was to import images of your own into your canvas for whatever reason you might have. And basically, I was correct. You just click the import button and it brings up a directory window to find the image you want to import. But I want to show you something really quick. First, here's an import of a picture of my girlfriend, Natalia Krasavina, looking as gorgeous as ever. And here's what happens when I try to import it. No problem. Perfect. Now, here's another one of her. Maybe a bit less clothing than before, but let's see what happens now. Yeah, exactly. And I'm sure you're not surprised either. Here's the original image again, just so you know what was not being allowed to be brought in. I mean, actually, the black dress that she's wearing is pretty much the same size as the dress she's wearing in the other one. It's just she's sitting in a different posture. Or sitting as opposed to standing. I guess the biggest problem is that when it's something that Midjourney isn't even creating or being used to create something else, in my opinion, the censorship has just gone too far. Imagine bringing that image into Photoshop, and before you can do anything to it, Adobe closes the window and tells you that you can't edit it. Actually, I wouldn't be surprised if that's coming soon from Adobe with everything connected and not air-gapped. Quickly, I did try a bunch of other Natalia images that I think are all fine and shouldn't be censored. I mean, I get not allowing nudity, but sheesh. Of all the images I tried, these are the ones that actually were able to go through. As well they should. But here are the ones that didn't, and gave the error every single time. Oh well, at least you can all enjoy the images now for a second. Even with as long as I've been talking, most likely, there are things I forgot, or even more likely, things I haven't even learned yet. But that's pretty much how I figure Patchwork works. Of which I'm sure there are a ton of features they are currently working on implementing already. But the first one I thought of early on was the whole style reference issue. I don't like that you're constrained to the random 6-digit numbers that happen to pop up when creating a new world. Even just the idea that I have to make the choice then and can't later is an issue. Especially when, even according to one of my other videos, there are nearly 4 billion different style reference options. I was, however, able to work in something crude by saving the world to a JSON file, editing it and changing the reference number in there and then loading it back in. This worked, except for the fact that the image is still the same, and it's kind of a pain in the butt to do. I mean, sure, I could probably figure out how to change the image too, but it's just not worth it at this point. Instead, I have sort of a workaround that just might be simpler for everyone and for more than just style references. As of now, random creates the exact same type of scraps as the other options, but I don't really know what it's specifically supposed to be used for, so I'll be using that now. What I'm going to do is create a random scrap and just give it the title SREF and a style reference of my choosing, 322-752-4486. And never mind, I just realized that random isn't as interesting as I thought. It actually just creates a random title scrap for a character, event, place, prop, or faction. So it's just random as to the type it creates. Boring. Well, I'm going to go with a faction scrap for this example now, as I don't see myself using more than the 3 factions I already have anytime soon. So first I'm going to delete this. So again, titling it SREF 322-752-4486, or whatever number you want to use, or whatever you use it for. With that, I'll just add in the description scrap as if it was the extension used at the end of an image prompt. So, --SREF space 322-752-4486. And I just realized that that's the length of a phone number and somebody's probably going to be getting a phone call. Please don't do that. Then, from that description scrap, I'll hit the painter's palette icon and create an image description scrap. Now, I don't have any because I already deleted them from this world, but if you have any ingredients showing in the top of your image, delete those, including SREFs and profiles. Though it will be up to you if you actually want to remove the profile or not, depending on if you plan to use it throughout. But by what I'm going to show you, there really isn't any reason to keep it. So with those ingredients at the top deleted, now type in a very simple prompt that you might want to use later at any point that may or may not have anything to do with the world you're creating. You just want something that will clearly show the style reference you're about to use. Because it's what Midjourney has already been using, I'm going to keep it simple and go with a cat wearing a top hat and a monocle. Not adding in any extensions and keeping it square. And now, with your cursor at the end of the prompt, hit the add link at the top of the scrap. Then click on the description scrap that says --SREF 322-752-4486, or whatever number you chose. Be sure that you are hitting around the outside and not actually selecting the text of it to edit it. If you click on it correctly, that extension in that description scrap will now be appended to the end of your prompt. This might not seem like a big deal, especially since it was already there before you started typing in the prompt, or because of the fact that you can just type it in real quickly, but this is just so that you can learn how to do this. And with that done, now hit the paint button and watch as it creates 4 new images of a cat with that style reference, or whatever you use for your prompt. It's going to be difficult, but I'm going to pick my favorite cat of the brood and delete the other 3. And since only the one gave a decent monocle and top hat together, this is a pretty easy choice. And what I have here now is a very easy to see reference to a preset with an image reference. Imagine having 3 or 4 of those of your favorite numbers instead. So now when working on your world, you can easily just add whichever one you want at any time by adding or appending the one you want with 2 clicks. Again, this might not sound all that game-changing until you realize that it's not just for style reference numbers. Let's create another one really quick so you can see what I mean. I'll be naming this one Preset 1138. But this description is going to be a bit different, and this should give away what I'm doing pretty easily. First, --AR169 --SREF 325030782 space 355605201 space --SW space 500. Though I personally would probably not use my personalization with this, I'm sure you get my point. It takes a minute to set them up, and then you have your presets ready and available for the entire time you're working on your world, or any world for that matter. Which brings me back to something I briefly touched on before. When I showed you how to add your main portal from the inventory that was in the bottom right of your screen, well, that's not all that the inventory is used for. Say I created a neighboring city for Oralis, therefore creating another world in Patchwork for it. The problem being that I wanted my characters available in both worlds. And what brought me to this is that I also want the presets available elsewhere. I'll do one of each at the same time to show how to do it. Let's take Ashen Cade, double-click his title so that his entire hierarchy is selected. Then, click on the double document icon titled Copy to Inventory. Then I'm going to do the same thing for the longer preset I just created. If it wasn't there before, the inventory now pops up in the bottom right, and it should now have 2 items in it, or more depending if you had other stuff in there already. With those in your inventory, you can now go to any world you want. I'm going to exit the Shady Oasis, and then I'm going to go check out US Outpost number 31 and see how Snake Plissken is doing. The rest is super simple. Hover over the items in the inventory, click the plus button that appears, and then click somewhere on the canvas. Then repeat for any other ones you might have. The character and the presets I created are now available in both worlds, and you now have the choice to keep them in your inventory still to add somewhere else, or click the X that appears when you mouse over it in the inventory and remove it, and they'll still be available in both worlds. The same thing can also be done with the world portals. So that right there should answer how you can easily fix any poor world within a world planning. And my bad, I forgot the image to go with it. That's because I didn't actually have the image linked to it. Oh well, very simple to create another image, as I'm sure you know by now. Before I end this, I want to list a few things that I would like to see added to Patchwork. Things that shouldn't be all too difficult. And please, if you have any other ideas, be sure to put them in the comments below. One is the ability to resize windows, especially description scraps, but also to elongate title scraps too. As you can see, some of them get very annoying when they're this long, but you can't make them wider to make them shorter. Also, just like with the titles, it would be nice to be able to actually see this entire title. It would also be nice if there was a button that was always available, maybe in the menu on the side, but to recenter your canvas to the world scrap as things get super busy eventually. Or even just a fit all button that zooms in or out and pans so that everything is visible at once on the canvas. Quick interruption. The next part of this video was visually boring as it's mostly information and explanation, but super interesting, I might add. However, it doesn't lend itself to interesting visuals, so I will be inserting a plethora of tests I tried out for the character of Aurelia. Though I barely ever change the prompt, Midjourney really wants to give her a bare midriff and a lot of cleavage. I used multiple style references, and usually it didn't matter. I even tried to change the weather to snowy and cold. Nope, still didn't matter. Anyway, back to the video with a ton of Aurelias in the background. A button to return to the main home canvas, or whatever they are calling it, Shady's Oasis in my case, instead of having to add the portal in each world from the inventory. Or maybe it's not even available in the inventory and you have to create a new portal, then link it, etc. A button would be nice. As I already kind of touched upon the style references, it would be nice to be able to use our own preferred style reference numbers from the beginning instead of the random cat ones made available. Aside from just adding it to every individual image generation or making the presets the way I did. Now, one thing I'm not sure why it doesn't exist, or maybe I'm just not seeing it, but how about the ability to actually delete a created world? Currently, hitting the X on the portal for the world only removes the portal itself. Of course, if this was available, this would need a confirmation pop-up when doing so. I'd also like to see another Imagine creation that's actually for something random, how I kind of misread the other version, and not a randomization of the other options that are already available. And now that import has been added, the ability to drag and drop an image instead would be so much nicer. And I take that back. Image drag and drop does work. I'm not sure if it was available all along and it didn't work for me, or if it was added while I was working on this video. But either way, excellent addition. This should have been the first suggestion, but dark mode. How is there not a dark mode? More importantly, why is there a light mode? If anything, dark mode should be the normal, and weird people should have to ask for a light mode instead. I'm having so much fun with Patchwork, and I really wanted to get this video out as soon as possible, so that also meant that I had to temporarily scrap the idea of a full-length synopsis video. Maybe one that's all pretty with tons of pictures and maybe videos. But it's a lot of work, and I'd prefer getting this out so more people can either learn about or just learn how to use Patchwork. One thing I totally forgot to mention about what Patchwork can be used for: Tabletop RPG. I hate the term game changer, but I'm not applying it to AI this time, but to how it could really help with all aspects of your next D&D campaign. Just think about it. So that's Patchwork in a nutshell. Okay, maybe a brontosaurus eggshell instead. In this video, we walk through creating a world, designing characters and places, adding factions, and tying it all together with a hopefully somewhat compelling story. Patchwork is more than just a world-building tool. It's a way to organize your ideas, visualize them seamlessly with Midjourney, and even collaborate with others. From characters and locations to factions and props, it brings everything into one connected space, ready to inspire your storytelling. Use it to outline your next short story or novel, or maybe even a blockbuster film. Hopefully, you found this video helpful and maybe even inspiring. Whether you're building a world for fun, a story, or a professional project, Patchwork is a great way to get started. What kind of world would you want to create? Let me know in the comments below. Or if you have any other questions, or if there's something else you'd like me to cover in another video. If you enjoyed this, please take a second to like the video, subscribe to the channel, ring the bell, and maybe share it with someone else who'd find it useful. Or just someone you want to bother. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope you have an amazing day.